report of Apple, you don't see the names of these companies that violate the labor violations or safety violations, all of the things in the codes of conduct. Okay, only 18 companies violated, no fire exit, 16 companies this and the other. But we as conscientious audience or public do not know who these companies are, what they are, in order to put pressure. That to me is a big loophole. And non-compliance historically has been tolerated by Apple. Since 2007, they've been doing audits, but then they don't so-called take out or abandon their contracts with violators. Violators, one, they get being authorized by Apple, stay, with the promise that, oh, we'll try to do better next time. So therefore, weakness in terms of monitoring and in terms of enforcement of what they found in terms of violations. Finally, conclusion, I think Dr. Fuller had said most of these things. I want to stress one couple of points here. One is that MNCs only respond when we pressure them. If you come away from this conference or this panel, take away point. They only respond when we act. That's what I found historically. Continues to be true now as I speak. Transparency is not enough. CSR can give us a false sense of comfort that, okay, great, we know that we have this kind of third-party monitoring company, workers are being treated fairly and work in a safe condition. No, there are loopholes. We don't know what's happening on the ground. So transparency is not enough. We as a general public need to know the structure of the global supply chains, as I mentioned earlier. And by the way, before I forget, the book is freely available to you all. I can, if you are interested in it, mention to me, email me, I can send you the link to the PDF. AFD is a French company, is a public, is a governmental company, organization that funded our project, makes it available to the world. Okay, so email me and I can give you the link, get access to the whole book, and you know our study. Work with all stakeholders, local people, universities, unions, NGOs. CSO is another acronym for you. Civil society organizations. This is big in the global south, okay? CSOs, work with them, and SMEs, of course. Now, actions. To me, having the consciousness, raise consciousness is a very important first step, like what we're doing now today. Raise consciousness, understanding, and then you can act. Now, action is, the array. Actions have, basically, you have a wide array of actions. You can choose to, voice or pressure MNCs to be accountable to their promise to us, or you can boycott the product or ultimately exit. But choose exit with care, because it may affect the workers over there, in far-flung countries. So all of these things, use it with care. Put pressure on MNCs and be accountable to customers, all of the suppliers, and especially sub-suppliers and communities, the people who surround the factories that make our products. All right, the next one is the cover of our book, and again, it's freely available to you. If you email me, I'll send you the link. Thank you.
I'm not sure if we want to go in the order that's on the program. We might just go to Sheila next. We'll give you a little bit of time to think about it.
Sure.
So Sheila Bowman from Monterey Bay Aquarium.
And I also have a presentation that's, there it is, I see it. Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me in the back? How many folks in this room consider themselves ocean lovers? You surf, you enjoy walking on the beach, you came to college pretty close to the ocean and your mascot's maybe an otter? Okay, hands up. How many people in the room are vegetarians? Pescatarians? Vegans? Carnivores? Omnivores? All right. All I'm trying to do this afternoon is get everyone thinking about the fact that you guys have a couple philosophies that I've already identified. You're ocean lovers, and you have a food philosophy. Probably in some cases, still developing that food philosophy, right? You know what you like to eat, but hopefully you're thinking about new things and trying different things that you haven't eaten in the past. Well, I'm here today from the Monterey Bay Aquarium. Anyone been over there? We have some new otters. If you otters haven't seen our otters, I really do recommend you come over because they're super cute. But I'm here to talk to you a little bit about our Seafood Watch program and what's going on as Angie kind of started the conversation about kind of some of the products that we eat here in Monterey, here in our everyday lives, where they're coming from, and maybe a few things that you didn't know about them. So, I think the starting point before we get too much into fish is just kind of the idea of food. We all want strong food systems. We all want to have, ideally, we're here in California, we have the right to think that we could have a local food system. We want self-reliant communities. We want food that comes from a healthy environment. We really would like food that comes to us through just systems. So there's a lot of expectations that we have from our food. Unfortunately, as hunger increases, unemployment goes up, prices go up, food deserts, there's places in this very state where the nearest food that you can get is either from a mini mart or a McDonald's. There's no grocery store in your immediate living area. We worry about things like COFOs. Anyone heard of a COFO? Right? Confined animal farming operations, basically the industrialization of our farms in this country and around the world. We worry about GMOs, genetically modified organisms. They're right now in front of the White House, picketing Obama, who just signed some legislation that allows, you might say, some shady workings on the GMO front to be go ahead and moving forward in this country. We're the only country out of most of the civilized, developed countries in the world that don't tell our people what's genetically modified that they're eating. Maybe we don't care, but if you do care, and maybe you should care, wouldn't it be nice to know? Every other country in the world that's developed knows that. Climate change related crop failures, those are things that we can all look forward to down the way. So just the idea that all of these things are happening in our food system locally, within our country, around the world, creates all kinds of pressure on a system that's providing food for all of us. Something you cannot really get away from. That's exacerbated by countries like our own, where we really want to pay the bare minimum for this commodity, right? Who loves all-you-can-eat shrimp night? All right, we're going to talk about shrimp down the road a little bit. But it's the small farmers, it's those operations, and it's the environment that starts to suffer when these kinds of pressures all push together. So we're going to hopefully think a little bit about all-you-can-eat night for the seafood lover in you. So why does this matter to an aquarium and other conservation organizations? Well, we're starting to see the repercussions of all of this demand for seafood on the world's oceans, right? Over 75% of the planet is the oceans. You'd think that they would be vast, untappable, untamable. I'm here to tell you that we're seeing those kinds of changes in the world's oceans from pole to pole. So it is a situation where, there's so many fish in the sea, right? Not as many as all of our mothers told us there were. And probably for some of you, right, still do. So let's talk a little bit, if we could, about global fish consumption, right? It's a major food protein for over 2 billion people on the planet. So in some cases, it's their only food protein for them and their animals. The industry around seafood, which can be farmed or wild caught, is a livelihood for another 200 million people. 90% of that is in developing countries. So one of the things I want you to take home today, if nothing else, all the seafood we eat in this country, 9% of it is stuff that we're catching and raising. The other 91% is coming from other parts of the world, all right? That's a key thing. So if you think, what can I do for the shrimp farmers in Vietnam, just think about it, because we're the ones eating that shrimp. In many cases, even they are not eating their own shrimp. It's also one of the most perishable products on the planet. I dare say, if anyone has a more perishable product, we could discuss that, but it's usually gone within about 7 to 10 days out of the water into your stomach, or it's rotten. And so for that reason, as you can tell, lots of places around the country, around the world do not have oceans, so this product has to be shipped. So there's a whole lot of levels here between where that fish was farmed or caught and how that fish gets to our dinner plate here in Monterey, the system in there between distributors and packagers and processors and shippers is extremely complicated. You talk about transparency, this is a tough one, because the salmon that you catch here, the squid that's caught in Monterey Bay, goes over to China for processing, comes back. So that's Monterey squid that's now labeled as product of China. It's all of our Pacific Coast salmon that may go to China to be cleaned, and then perhaps to another country to be smoked, processed, turned into some other type of food item, and then comes back. Tremendous food miles. So all of these things come into sort of play when you're thinking about how do I go about eating fish. In addition to so I just wanted to sort of point this out. You can see seafood consumption around the world. Hopefully not too many surprises there. Most people are eating fish if they can. The thing about seafood is this industry also has other kinds of problems involved just with the operations in the water. So how we're fishing, how we're farming, lots of issues and things to think about there. Persistent use of poor practices, things like indiscriminate nets. Who has heard of dolphin safe tuna? Hands up. How many of you think that dolphins are really safe? Thank you. All right, great. That's not still a great way for a dolphin to live, is with dolphin safe tuna. We really have to look at other ways to catch tuna than to find dolphins and put a net around them, assuming and knowing that the tuna are in the water below them, and then trying to let those dolphins out as our dolphin safe action. Really need to think about those kinds of things. Pirate fisheries, where fishermen are just out there doing their thing because the ocean's a big place. And when you're down here fishing for Chilean sea bass, and there's no one for literally thousands of miles, you do what you want. Right? Who enjoys Chilean sea bass? Right? 3 of the 5 Chilean sea bass coming into this country illegally caught by boats that do not have the right management, the right gear, and even the permission to be part of that fishery. So another one to think about as we, well, luckily we've all just had lunch, but as we think about dinner, right? So not to feel bad, just something to think about as you go through how you're engaged with this particular business. Weak and unenforced management, conflicts over the conservation of natural resources, so it's business or the earth, business or workers' rights. And I dare say, it sounds like that was discussed yesterday. I would like to think that it shouldn't be that and or, right? Maybe business has to be incorporating some of those workers' rights and those environmental considerations to be a successful business. So that's what we're working with our Seafood Watch program. I want to talk a little bit, just to give you some additional context, where this problem has come from and where we're going with it. Hopefully everyone recognizes this geography. We have some specialists in the room, but this is the North Atlantic. You see Florida there to the bottom left, yes? And we're in the year 1900. These are data that came from fishermen. Came back to shore and said, I caught this many fish, and this is where I caught it. All right? Looks pretty good. Those red hot spots are where you have a lot of fish. When you look at the same kind of year 100 years later, you can see what it looks like to take 90% of the world's table fish out of the oceans. There's the before, there's the after. So how does this kind of thing happen? Well, I'll tell you, this fishery was bumping along in a really great place in the 1850s. That was a good time to be a codfish fisherman. But as we moved into this last century, we saw a lot of progression of technology. Boats got faster, steam engines replaced by diesel engines, little nets replaced by big nets, go further offshore, fish in deeper waters, you have a lot of capacity, and then boom, something happened in the 1960s. You guys weren't here for it, but I'll tell you what happened. We invented something called a trawl net. Anyone heard of trawls? Big nets, weighted down. They rake across the seafloor. So they're really good at catching fish that live on the seafloor, like cod. But you can imagine what else they do, right? Who's seen a clear-cut forest, right? That's like catching your deer by just taking out the whole forest, right? So then you get the deer, but your expectation better not be to come back to that forest in the next, 50 years to catch any more deer, because you've ruined, destroyed the habitat, right? So that's what trawling does, and we really went nuts for it in the 60s. Not just our trawls, but we had all of the world's trawlers come into our waters and do a lot of damage in that particular area. We did get some legislation together. Different countries cannot come into our federal waters anymore, but as you can see for the cod, things have been bad for a long time. Legislation went in to manage that fishery, try to reduce the amount of fish being caught. It really hasn't worked. So this is not a very good story when it comes to sort of thinking about the species known as Atlantic cod. Habitat damage, this is what it looks like down under. For those of us who don't get to see the seafloor, when you clear cut the seafloor, you really take away a fish's ability to have young, have fish have a place to live and breed and grow up. So what are we going to do? Global fish consumption is only going up. You'll see that as of the late 1990s, who was here in 1996, right? That's when peak fish for our world's oceans was reached. We have not caught as many fish since 1996 as we caught that year. So wild fisheries are really starting to be something that are even decreasing as we speak. So you look at aquaculture, right? Fish farming, that's really going to be the way to go. Or is it, right? Most of the fish that we are catching that are farmed, many of them raised in these kind of open net pens. It's really great if you have one of them. It's really not great when you have 20 or 30 of them, each with 6 or 7 million fish in there. So this is the confined animal farming of the seas, something we need to think about. Who's enjoying farmed salmon these days? Okay, this is how we're getting most of our farmed salmon these days. Now this is an industry I don't want to give a complete black eye to. They're getting better. They're making improvements. It's because, look how many people in this room know about farmed salmon and have done the take action that we've been talking about. But a lot of fish, a lot of the seafood that we eat, and we're getting back to that all-you-can-eat shrimp night, are raised on land. So this is Vietnam.
Yes.
So some of you lucky enough to have been there. This is what happens between 1993 and 2002, right? Not even 10 years. And you can see the green literally was green with mangroves. The rainforest of this particular kind of part of the world. Who knows about rainforest destruction, right? So please add mangroves when you talk about rainforest destruction. Mangroves are probably one of the most impacted habitats on the planet. We have probably numbers that indicate over 60% of the the mangroves have just been removed for pulp, for wood, to build shrimp farms like you're seeing here. All kinds of removal of the natural habitat for industrial purposes. Now the thing that also mangroves do, if you've ever been to a mangrove forest, you know they like to grow right along the ocean. When hurricanes come ashore, it's really pretty much known that mangroves are what start to damper those kinds of impacts, slow the winds, absorb the high-rise tides. So take away the mangroves and you've also started to create literally places where people are trying to live that are really in the path of major storms. And in Thailand, where we had the tsunami, this was the kind of thing that many people spoke to. The areas with mangroves survived so much better than the places that didn't. So I think what we're talking about when we've talked about shrimp and cod so far are really the unacceptable level of impact that these businesses are having on the environment. And I'm here to tell you that we've been sort of focusing on the environment, but the social justice piece is right hand in hand with this. If you're destroying entire mangroves, I can tell you that's where the people are living. That's where those people are getting very little money for what they are producing. And many times these shrimp farms, which use a lot of chemicals, leave a lot of shrimp poo-poo, are polluting the very places where these people were living and the places where they were getting the vegetation and some of the other things that they were using for everything from medicine to food. So really you're taking away kind of that habitat that's been supporting the humans as well. You know, nobody who's looking at this doesn't really think that this can't be improved upon. And that really, if you can get the efficiencies in the food chain to take into account the environment and into account some of the social justice issues, that really we could do a whole lot more, get a whole lot more food out of what we're doing currently. How does that happen? I'm just going to repeat what you said, Angie, which is consumer demand. You've got to get out there and say, this is how I want my food to be produced. It turns into policy, and it turns into industry reform. And that's what we do at Seafood Watch. So those of you who have pocket guides, we have some up here if you don't. If you're a smartphone person, you can download our app. And the key thing is, choose your seafood using the sustainability marks that we give different species. This is what we look at, which is pretty much the full gamut of how these businesses are doing business. It's not enough to just go out and count fish. You guys have to talk about how you're counting them. Pocket guides, smartphone apps, anybody got it already on their phone? Awesome. Are we wireless here?
Yes, we are.
We could be downloading it right as we speak. We also have a website if you're not a smartphone person, and we do have it for Android, but also Apple. So here's the key thing, and this is what I think you guys need to do. You need to realize that the way you are voting for food systems is with your dollars. So choosing the food you eat with care. Being specific to seafood, carry that pocket guide, download the app, use it when you shop. Angie, you said it really well. Ask the question, and if you can't find it sustainable, you kind of got to walk away, right? But it's really important to ask the question. If you just turn away and go over and buy some ribs, you have not given your feedback into the system that's creating these problems. You've got to voice your opinion and your need. Be skeptical of unsubstantiated claims, please. You're of the age where skepticism is part of your very makeup. If I come to you and say, this is sustainably done, I better hear you say, tell me more about that, because most of these terms, sustainably caught, responsibly raised, environmentally friendly, completely unregulated, you can say whatever you want using those terms. So you've got to ask the question. Then you're looking for some kind of third-party verification. Somebody else should be saying, yeah, we agree with that business. It is more sustainable. Try something different. If you're just eating shrimp, salmon, and tuna, you've got to try something else. We're never going to be able to all eat 3 things on the planet. If you can buy local or seasonal fish, we have a local group called Local Catch who brings, a weekly basket of seafood if you wanted to get into that. Smaller markets, that kind of thing. Find yourself a good fishmonger and ask questions, and they should be able to answer them. If somebody responds to your question, where's the fish come from, and they say the water, I would say that that's part of the problem and not part of the solution, and you have to keep asking and pushing up against that. What I'm going to tell you is I'm on the receiving side of those things. When enough of us ask that question, that's when the restaurants call me and they're like, what the heck is this about? So you've got to push for them to start moving back to try to get more information. And then when you can, using, of course, our Seafood Watch restaurant partners, we've got a good group of them in this area, including your own Otter Bay Cafe. So the last thing I just want to say is, this is what I don't want anyone to go away thinking. I can't care, or else I'd be consumed by what I consume. You've got to do something. If it's just the shrimp, the all-you-can-eat shrimp night, think twice about it. If it's just the Chilean sea bass that you're going to not eat anymore, great. You do not have to know the world's fish to make a change. Just make a change in 1 or 2 things today. And a couple more things down the road. But if you don't get engaged because it's overwhelming, then none of this is working. So I'll just leave you with a picture of our great white shark who was with us last year. This is how we like our sharks, with their shark fins on them, not in some soups. I don't mean to offend anyone's culture, but sharks kind of need their fins to be alive. So I'm going to leave it at that, and I guess we're going to have questions at the end of the session, and I'll look forward to those. Thank you.
Bravo.
Let's stay with the food issue. We're going to go with Shelby next.
Hello, everyone. I don't have a presentation. I have prepared, but it's kind of going to be more of like a conversation of sorts. So that's what I prepared for you today. When Angie asked me to speak, she asked me to speak on the behalf of small family farmers. I work with a nonprofit organization called Everyone's Harvest that runs farmers markets in the area as well as community gardens. And I won't lie, I was a little bit intimidated by that question, because although I have spent some time with farmers at markets, the Service Learning Institute has made me wary of like representing people and being that expert on stuff I don't know too much about. So I have gained some information from a little research I did that I'm going to share with you. So the take-home message from different people that I talked to was kind of that farming is hard in general. So what Angie wanted me to look at was differences between organic farming and then conventional large-scale farming. So although within a small family-owned farm that is organic, you are avoiding those heavy chemicals, which we all know are very harmful to the workers that work in those fields. But the fact of organic farming is that it's something like 70% more labor intensive than conventional farming. So there are some realities that are somewhat unavoidable, you could call them. So as far as like workers' conditions, let's say, people kind of pick and work together in small groups. So if one person has something going on, they're sick or a family emergency, and they can't make it to work that day, the whole group has to pick up that slack. So in a conventional farm, maybe their boss is someone that they don't know and they're going to be rude and say you need to pick up the slack. And in a family farm, they might be nicer about it, but the fact of the matter is that the work still has to get done. So from my findings, as far as organic versus conventional related to social responsibility, there are kind of some unavoidable truths related to just the hard work and labor that farming is. So as I was thinking about this, I realized that I have a lot of my own experiences working with corporations. So I started to think about, as an ENVS student in my ethics classes, how I thought about corporations involving caring about the environment into their values. And I struggled to think of how do you change companies' values or individuals' values? And to me, it always kind of leads back to money, because I have examples of successful social rights movements, such as Martin Luther King Jr. with the lunch sit-ins. Like they couldn't change people's minds, but they could hurt their pockets, kind of thing. Or Gandhi with the marches to the salt fields. Those were successful movements that were successful because they were able to tap into the financial wealth versus changing individuals' values, because we all know from conflicts we've had in our lives that that's pretty difficult to do. So my question is just, how can we appeal to our capitalistic society while maintaining ethical values? And it's something I've been just contemplating I'm a 5th year senior right now, so I've been thinking about it for a long time. I haven't really come up with too many answers. So I just kind of have a lot of questions. Hopefully I'll just provoke some thought, but I don't have answers. So another thing I began to think of was my own experiences working under a multinational corporation. So before I got my job at the Service Learning Institute, I worked at Pete's on campus, which, as you guys may know, is under Sodexo Dining Services. And although I am incredibly thankful for that job, it paid my bills, and I got free coffee as a college student, which is just wonderful. I did have a lot of issues. And a lot of the complaints, when I would talk to my bosses, who all my management I thought were great, and definitely, they would listen and they cared, but it was always kind of the same answer of, it's out of our hands, it's above us, there's nothing we can do. So one little example, this might be one of those kind of like first world problems, you're just complaining sort of example, but when we have sunny days here, they're few and far between, so students get really excited and they want iced drinks. So the coffee shop would be really, really busy with students ordering ice drink after ice drink. But for whatever reason, the ice machine we had was too small. And I can't remember if it was that the wrong one was ordered or that our ice machine went somewhere else, but the fact of the matter was we would run out of ice, have very angry students, and then I or another barista would go across campus to get 2 full buckets of ice, carry them across campus, bring them back, only to have 10 more minutes of ice drinks. And all of the frustrations of the students fell on me and my other coworkers who were also students. And, we would talk to our bosses and they'd say, sorry, there's kind of nothing we can do about it. So I tried to appeal, the crazy part is I tried to appeal the financial component. I said, well, we don't have ice for this half hour, and ice drinks cost a lot, and that's money that you're not making. I tried to go that route, and then the response was sort of, well, we're still making a good amount, so the revenue is still there. So I just couldn't really get anywhere with that, and that was sort of disheartening. Also, recently I watched a documentary in one of my classes with Deb Burke, right there. And it was called Made in LA, and it was about garment industry workers in Los Angeles. And it was a really inspiring but also disheartening story. So it was a group of women that were kind of organizing together with a local nonprofit against Forever 21 because they produced garments for them that they were paid something like 14 cents per garment that was then sold up, for however many dollars. So they recognized the power of the people at the bottom. They used different analogies where they would have a triangle showing the person at the top, and then once again, like the subcontractor in the middle that is responsible for buying it from them. So when they went to the head, the CEO of Forever 21, he made the response that a lot of people make is that, well, I don't know what goes on. I buy it from the person in the middle, so it's not my responsibility, right, to know what goes on in these places. So the inspiring part was that after a 2-year-long boycott, they were able to reach some sort of settlement in court with the CEO of Forever 21. And basically, they couldn't specify, but what came out of it was kind of like a corporate social responsibility statement, just saying that, yes, they are responsible for the treatment of the workers on the bottom level. They can't say, well, I don't know what's going on.